So today we're going to study the theories surrounding free speech and why it's important. So this is kind of we've been building and building this semester our knowledge base, but today we're going to really focus on why is this stuff so important? Why is this class important for everyone? And then as we move forward, starting next week, we're going to be doing more topics, so like big areas of free speech. So next week's defamation, for example, and I'll talk at the end of class about what you need to do to prepare for that. All right, so if you read the article that I posted on Blackboard, which was this, for the good of our online people, okay? How many different theories of free speech did you find when you were reading this article? A handful? 3? 4? You guys are dead this morning. Could at least fake participation for the people watching the video. Well, in the article, I'll just tell you, there's only a small amount of free speech theories. In my time and experience, I found 9 different theories that justify this concept. So we're going to go through all 9 of these different theories. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to try and develop a 10th theory. Why? Because I want to be famous, right? I want to develop a theory, so I'm going to steal your idea. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe not. So what I want you to do, first of all, before we dive into the different theories, I know you've read the work, the text, so you already have some ideas circulating in your mind about why this stuff's important. But I want you to turn to your neighbor and do a little socially distancing brainstorming. So I'm going to play one song on Spotify. I want you to write out as many reasons why you think free speech is important. And don't worry if you accidentally use some of the theories that you read about, but think just from your own personal experience and like the journal that you're writing this week for your online homework, why is it important? Okay, why do we need this in our personal lives and why do we need it in society? So let's just do a little brainstorming. So I don't know if Cassandra and Destiny want to partner up. Marcus and Ashley can, if you want to like turn, so you could be a group of 3. Let me find a 90s rock song. If you are online watching this video, do the same thing. Try to brainstorm as many possible ways as why this stuff is important. And we're going to go with the 10 theories while you're brainstorming. So turn around, talk to your neighbors, and see if you can come up with some stuff. So those of you watching this online, when you send me your summary of class notes, put some of your ideas for this activity in the email as well. And hopefully you're still watching and that you didn't just fast forward this on YouTube.
Yeah, so like looking for the truth, just in general. Yeah, but everyone was showing me what they
live in a jail-free, penalty-free. Where you're going with that?
Yeah.
For like, yeah, really like you're
Make sure you're writing all of these ideas down. I'm hearing a lot of different stuff. We'll need them when we come to developing number 10. I literally sit in my office and I look at the other stuff. And then I'm like, I end up kind of, You got about a minute left of the cranberries. Just to liven up their video a little bit.
Oh no, I can't remember. I connected to my hotspot. I don't know why. No, mine's not connected. Okay, so it's not.
Bella, you should talk.
I've had more difficulties this year now. I don't need any. I use my hotspot half the time.
All right, 190 song down. Okay, so put a box around your ideas or draw a line or something like that, because I want you to save those ideas. And we're going to use them at the end of class to fill in number 10. All right, so let's start with the first theory that's talked about in the article. The reason why I wanted to start with brainstorming is because as we go through these different theories, I knew it would influence your opinions and your ideas about why free speech matters. So I wanted you to have some like free thoughts first and some free writing. So what is the first theory of free speech in the article, in the law review article that you guys read? Yep, Katie. The search for the truth. I'm going to call that, I'm going to rename that the marketplace of ideas. But if you want to call it the search for truth, you absolutely can, because that's basically what it is. So the marketplace of ideas is an idea, a concept, a theory that was created by an English philosopher named John Stuart Mill in like the 1800s or something. I have pictures of him in one of my PowerPoints, but I'm not going to go digging to try and find it right now for you because it's not that important, because he did. So have you ever been to like a farmer's market before? Okay. And you walk around and you see lots of different stalls selling different produce, right? Different types of fruit. I like the one in Ybor, you know, you can buy like candles and jewelry and stuff like that too. But you have all of these different things for sale, right? This is what the marketplace of idea is. Imagine these are all different ideas hosted by different people. They're just like different products. They all look different. They all have different backgrounds, different bases, etc. So according to John Stuart Mill, we need free speech theory because we need to encourage a marketplace of ideas. We need to live in a society where we have lots and lots of variety of fresh ideas, just like the produce at a farmer's market. And the reason why we need to have a marketplace like that is just what Katie said. There's 3 specific things that I want to highlight for you. All right. So first things first, you need to have a variety of ideas in order to distill the one true statement, the one true idea. You can even look at this like a scientist, that you have different scientific theories and you need to test them, and then you determine what the one valid one is. But in order to reach that like one scientific theory that everyone accepts that's true, you have to go through lots of different ideas and kind of like knock them down, right? You have different hypotheses and you knock them down. So you have to have as many ideas as possible so you can distill the truth, all right? Next, it's possible that society, the widely accepted view, is actually incorrect. And so if you don't allow lots of different ideas to come up, then that incorrect view is never going to be challenged and people are just going to continue to be ignorant. So I found out recently that one of my students believes the world is flat. I'm not even joking with you. She believes the world is flat. So I'm thinking back to, I don't know, when do you think they discovered that the world's actually round? Like 1500s, 1400s? What do you think?
Yeah.
Like
Columbus.
So like, let's say 1400s, right? Everyone thought that the world was flat and that like Columbus was just going to sail off the edge of the world, right? We know today that that's wrong, but that was the widely accepted view. Okay, so you have situations throughout history where people believe one thing like broadly as a society, but we know it's not accurate. So you have to have a marketplace like this where you have lots of different ideas that are allowed to be brought up in order to challenge that false view that everyone has. Because if we didn't allow like new thought, we would still think that the world is flat. Just like that UT student thinks the world is flat. Yeah, tell him. Well, I actually haven't talked to her about it. People in my class have told me about it. They were like, hey, you know, so-and-so, and I'm not going to say because I think a couple of you might know her, so-and-so believes that the world is flat. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this information? Like, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how to go about building an argument to prove to her that the world is round because, I mean, that's just common sense that we've grown up with. But anyway, can you think of another example in history where like the widely viewed, widely held opinion was wrong or inaccurate? Yeah. Yeah, so another scientific theory is that the Earth is the center of the universe and everything goes around it, but we really know that the sun is and we circulate around. I had to stop and think for a minute. I'm not a science professor. What's another one, maybe a non-science one that was widely held and widely believed that now in modern times we know was false? Think. Even if you went to like the dark side, right? Say we were in like Germany in the 1930s or something, maybe like Nazi beliefs, right? Yeah, that like the Nazi party got so many people, not everyone, right? But so many people bought into that like doctrine of what they were selling. And nowadays when we look back at it, we know they were completely wrong, right? And totally fucked up. Okay, so you need to have a lot of ideas to get the truth. You need to have a lot of ideas to challenge widely accepted beliefs in case they're wrong. And lastly, the third part of the marketplace of ideas is there is a nugget of truth in every single opinion out there. So even if we have all of these are different scientific theories and most of them are wrong or all of them are incorrect, there's some little kernel of truth in there, whether it's the inspiration that generated that idea, or maybe it's like a subset of a main theory, but there's something in there that has some type of validity. So even if you take a modern day example of that and you look at something like fake news. So fake news, we know it's news that's consumed, it's information that's consumed by a lot of people, and it's inaccurate. But if you really look at like a news story, a fake news story, you can distill from it why did someone believe it enough to share? What was their motivation to share? And you can distill some actual real information from it, even if the story itself is false. Does that make sense? So truth is really important to John Stuart Mill and the marketplace of ideas. I like to think like you're going grocery shopping for the truth. But what's the problem? What's the problem with this theory that's talked about in the article? What's the problem with prioritizing truth above all else in a society? What do you think?
Isn't it that like if you always think that like yours opinion is like the truth, that you're never going to be able to like all the other truths to like find like the real truth?
Okay, so one problem could be that if you think that like your truth is important, then you might not listen to the other truths. So we could have this marketplace of ideas, but it's only going to work if you're open to hearing the other ideas. Okay, Callahan?
I would say like you may like opposition, you may disagree with it, so you just like completely ignore the fact that that person's saying anything.
Okay, good. So there's the theory that if you disagree with what someone says, then you're just closing yourself off, right, to learning anything else about that. Okay. So one of the things in the article that I thought was interesting is that it says, what really is the value of prioritizing truth above, like, in terms of our social values? Like, as a society, we have certain values, right? I mean, this isn't a sociology class, but what are things that, like, we value as a society? Education, healthcare, you know, what else? Peace, the ability of people to like be financially, especially in America, financially independent, right? Your ability to like buy property and to live your life and have freedom. Where does truth really fall in all of those things? Like as Americans, does truth really matter that much to us? Does it matter that much to you personally? Like in terms of values, is it in your top 5? Okay, but is it your number 1? Like Callahan, is it your number 1?
Yeah.
It is? Okay, so Callahan's good, but the rest of you, I would put like education above, you know, something like that. Even though there's truth in education too, but so does prioritizing truth really have social value if we have lots of other things in our society that we hold to be important? And at times the quest, right, because it's a quest for the truth and the quest for knowledge is not always like the top priority. I mean, in times of war, I think even Callahan would shelve his quest for truth, right, for like national security and safety and to prevent loss of life and stuff like that. So another thing is, do we have to have some type of consensus, some type of widespread agreement in order for something to be viewed as true? Or could we still be living in a world where like one person is correct, but everyone else doesn't believe them? I mean, if you look at politics right now, we're very divided among the political parties. Both groups think the other ones are completely wrong, right, about a lot of different issues. So who's right? Are we ever going to be able to determine what the truth is? Because both groups think so strongly that they're the ones that are right. You see what I'm saying? So there are some problems with this model. I would even challenge, do we ever find what's true? Like, can we ever ascertain truth? Because even if we discovered, like, you know, what makes the universe tick, 10 years from then, someone else is going to come up with a competing theory, right? So, like, do we ever really get to that? So it's all about the journey, right, Callahan? It's the journey, right? The quest for truth. So it's not a perfect system, but I think there is some merit to it. So in modern day times, we could apply this if you do look at something like the different political parties. And you take an issue, because like out west is on fire. My best friend lives in Portland and she's been like packed up for days, ready to evacuate. They keep changing the evacuation level of where she lives because she's like outside the city. And it's the photos and devastation. It's just a nightmare, right? And so I watched the news this morning and Trump went out to California because, you know, like the whole West Coast is on fire, not just out in Oregon. But the governor of California was like challenging him about climate change. And what's Trump's view on climate change? It's not a thing, right? So even just watching the news this morning while I'm drinking coffee about the wildfires going on out west, because it's important to me since my friend lives out there, you could see climate change is real, climate change is not real, right? And you have that, it's important in our society to have that dialogue and competing views, because somewhere in all of these probably exists like some real truth about like climate change and what's really happening, but we might not ever get to it because of the competing views. But we need the competing views, okay? So that's why that theory is really important. Okay, next model, next theory. My political science majors should find this to be like the most important one. I think you're going like quite literally. Not necessarily interpreting the metaphor. I was moving on to government. Do you have that in your notes?
Oh, yeah. It's just, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the interpreting the metaphor falls under the first one. We call this the self-government model. All right, I know that Katie and Patricia are poli-sci majors. Anyone else a poli-sci major in here? No? All right, Patricia, how does democracy work? Test your skills. How do people get in power in a democracy?
People vote them in.
People vote them in. So under this model, right, there's two parts that we're going to talk about, but in general, under this model, freedom of expression is going to be critical in a democratic society. Why? Because it is your duty to participate in politics. Because in our structure, you elect your leaders. It is your civic obligation. This is your job as a citizen of this nation to vote and to engage in like political discourse. Deliberation and political discussion is important. So regardless of what you believe about climate change, it's your job as a citizen to participate in that debate about different views. And also, probably one of the more important factors of this theory is that we have the ability to do what? Who can we criticize? The government. We can criticize our elected leaders. I mean, Kathy Griffin had a severed Trump head. She had a model of Donald Trump's head with blood dripping out of it. She didn't go to jail. She just lost a couple of comedy gigs and was like blacklisted in Hollywood, okay? You go to a country like Russia, what happens if you challenge Putin? Yeah, or you get nerve gas, because now, did you guys know that the opposition leader in Russia is in the hospital due to an apparent like Soviet era nerve agent that like, so you go bye-bye. Right? Or even in Egypt, I think, did I tell you this on day one about the guy that posted a picture on Facebook of their leader wearing Mickey Mouse ears? Like he photoshopped Mickey Mouse ears. Jail for 3 years because of Mickey Mouse ears on the president. I mean, obviously he doesn't like Disney. And I don't either, so I understand that. But still, we're very lucky that in our society, we are allowed to criticize our elected leaders, because in other places, prison, death, right, all that kind of stuff. So there's two parts to the self-government model. The first part is there's value in information. I'm going to put info. We have to inform rational individuals about what the government's doing. Because if citizens, if we are not given data, the arguments from politicians, if we don't have access to records and information, hearings, all that stuff, the debate that goes on, when it comes time for us to vote, what might happen? We might not make a good decision. We're going to make a bad decision because we're not well informed. So under the self-government model, the biggest function, right? One of the big functions is to inform rational individuals of what's going on behind the scenes, because we have all this power, right? We have power. And we are responsible for choosing who's in office, whether it's the president, whether it's local representatives, whether it's people on the school board, right? It's with us. So we need to have information to come up with that. And again, it's because we, the people, are sovereign, right? We're independent and we're free. And people are their own rulers in a democracy. We decide how we want to be governed and ruled, right? It's not like in Russia that Putin tells society like how they're going to live and how they're going to be ruled. We tell our government what we want, theoretically. I say like allegedly, you know, because I think all politicians are corrupt. But anyway, all right, the second thing with the self-government model is that these informed individuals have to have the right to communicate that information, their views, their desires, their opinions, up to their government officials. Because imagine in a society where citizens are not allowed to communicate with their elected officials, then the majority, like the people that are elected, are not going to govern the way that they should, right? They're not going to govern efficiently. So it's kind of like if a politician starts like voting on bills in a manner that is contradictory to what like his electorate wants, right? Like his voter base wants, that's a problem. And so the people that put him in office should be allowed to go and complain to him and communicate to him and say, you're not doing what you told us you were going to do. And do we think that's important? Do politicians sometimes get swayed by money or lobbying, and they sometimes put, you know, on the back seat like what we really put them in office to do? Okay, so that's going to be really important. So we like this theory, right? Yay, democracy. Woo, America, fuck yeah. But what's the problem? What's the problem with this theory? There's problems with all of these theories. So start thinking critically. What's the problem? I mean, the article talks about some of the problems, but yeah, Marcus.
A lot of like gray area, like you can inform them, but are you really gonna do anything about it?
Okay, so there's gray. I've got to repeat for the microphone for you people online. Yeah, so there's gray area because the politician might even say like, oh, I'm doing what I said I was going to do, but really it's not, right? Or they're swayed by, like I said, those outside influences. Okay, so there's some gray area. It doesn't always seem to work the right way. Yeah.
Is information truly unbiased?
Okay, so that's another problem with it is bias. Is the information that the rational citizen getting accurate? Could it be biased? And I think we all are familiar with, you can take a chart or a graph of data, or you can take a data set and you can develop different graphs that say what you want, right? I had a student give a speech in class about maps once, and it really opened my eyes. He's like, here's the data, but I'm going to create two very different maps showing how this data can be represented. And so people can skew information very easily. All right, Callahan, what were you going to say?
I would say like what you said, like the corruption, like people say like persuasion, or like if you're like running a state government and like this business is like, listen, I'm going to leave your state, and like you have to fill.
So corruption's very easy, right? Once you're elected, it's, you know, you've got to balance not just what your citizens want, but also like economic factors within a state or something like that. So the person might not even be bad, you're just juggling a lot as a politician. Okay. With this system, who has the power? The rulers or the people? The people, because they're the ones electing the rulers. This assumes a lot about the people. It assumes that they're that rational and informed public. And what do we know about Americans today? Are they really the most informed? Yeah, they're not rational, they're not informed, but yet they're still making decisions. So I don't remember if it was someone in my other class wrote in their essay, it might have been your essay, that when they wake up in the morning, they read the news by going onto Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
That was you?
Yeah.
And I think I laughed when I was grading in my office, and I think I put in there, like, you need to download some news apps, right?
I think I was saying, like, that's what I only used to look at,
But now, yeah.
but now.
Yeah. But I think that's really accurate,
Yeah.
because I would argue that a lot of students get their news from Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, even faculty members that I'm friends with will send me like screenshots of things that they see on Twitter. And I'm like, do you not read like the Tampa Bay Times? Do you not read the Washington Post? Like, come on. So even that, like, we're not even always getting accurate information to make those decisions. Marcus?
I was just gonna say, a lot of the news channels are also like biased, so which one do you watch?
Yeah, so if we're getting our news, our information filtered through a media outlet, that's going to be biased, right? That's going to be biased. So I always tell people, download like opposing news apps and see how they report the same information differently. But in practice, it's difficult because I get angry sometimes with certain news outlets. But yeah, so it's putting a lot of power with the people. And in general, I think people are stupid, right? Like, just as a personal thing, like, I think people are really stupid. So anyway, so that's one of the problems. The other problem with this theory is, if you look back, and as we're going to move forward in the semester and we learn more about freedom of expression and free speech, is freedom of expression is really geared to protect like artistic thought and like original thought. There is some like case law about like political speech and political rhetoric, but really more of the focus has been on like an individual's ability to express themselves, like clothing in schools, or protecting their reputation with defamation laws and stuff like that. So a lot of the focus throughout history since the First Amendment came into existence has been more about protecting your ability to express yourself and like paint weird art, get your tattoos, all that kind of stuff, like your individual expression. That's not necessarily self-government, because if you think about it, our system of government came first before the First Amendment. So did we really even need the First Amendment for our government, right? Our system of government was already in place. So that's kind of one of the other things. And then the last criticism of this theory is this model gives more power to the majority groups in a society. So whoever has more of the power, like the political power. So minority views, like if you're from like a smaller like political party or something like that, your voice does not weigh as much as someone that's part of the majority. That's just the way it is. So that's kind of our paradox, is the minority views might not be able to be expressed as broadly, but then also if they're criticizing majority views, then that could even be deemed as undemocratic by some people. So there's a paradox there. So there's a lot of different problems with this theory. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? Our system of government came first, but do we need the First Amendment for it to operate fully? Or did we have that and then really we got free political speech once the First Amendment was entered, right? So which really is necessary? Sorry, I'm like sweating really bad under this mask today. I don't know what's going on. I think it's because it's like 1,000% humidity outside. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to do my hair this semester. Like, there's just no point. Mask and humidity. Okay, now the next theory is by the theorist Millian, and I'm probably not going to ask you for like his specific name. John Stuart Mill, though, you need to know, I feel like, just for your own life, because the marketplace of ideas will show up in like other classes, like if you take philosophy or even maybe some political science classes, it'll appear. Let me make sure I'm spelling this right. Autonomy. And we have the autonomy theory. With this model, who has autonomy, like power to make their own decisions? If we have the communication model and we have the sender sending a message to the receiver, who is the person with the power in that relationship according to the autonomy principle? You have a 50-50 chance. Cassandra, pick one. No. So it would be the opposite. Destiny, who would it be? The receiver. Okay. So it's the listener that has the autonomy. Why? Why does the listener have the power? Yeah.
Because they can choose to take an information they're being told.
Yeah. They, hopefully, as a rational person, they have the ability to actually like listen, absorb, and pay attention to an idea. They choose what to believe, and they can weigh these different ideas. So let's take the sender is sending the receiver lots of different theories, okay, about the earth. The listener has the power to decide for him or herself what to believe. So it puts a lot of power in this person. So free speech is justified and it's explained by giving people respect, right? Respecting the individual choice of the listener. Which is interesting because I think what Cassandra was saying with it being the sender is that would have been my logical first guess as well, right? Is you would think that the person generating and saying the ideas would be the one that has more of like the power and autonomy. So again, the listener has the power to like weigh different opinions and make a decision on what they believe. So let's see, what might be a problem with this?
Uninformed receiver, like choosing something that just fits their personal agenda.
Yeah, people are stupid. So an uninformed listener might just believe anything that a sender sends, okay? And even though we like this model because you should be able to decide for yourself what to believe, but we know there's problems with that. This theory also completely neglects the sender, which in the communication model is just as important as the receiver, right? You have to have both, because if you remove a receiver, then there's no communication. And if you remove the sender, then there's no communication either. You have to have two people on either end. And this theory only accounts for these people. Also, someone in this position, an autonomous person, an autonomous listener that has like power to make decisions on their own, to weigh competing views and stuff like that, would never consent, would never agree to let the government monitor or change like the rules about expression. So in our country, you know, we talked about the sources of free speech law. We know there's a lot of different areas of the law that regulate what you can say and act and do in terms of expression. If this theory is accurate, this individual would never agree to that, would never let like court decisions come out regulating their speech. So that's another criticism on it. Okie dokie, last theory in the article. Anyone? Yeah. Self-realization. That sounds like, what's the name of the theorist, the psychologist that developed those, like the pyramid of need, Maslow? Yeah, something like that. And like at the top of the pyramid, like self-realization, like your mind opens up and like a light beam of knowledge comes. Is that what this theory is all about? No. This is not one of those like hierarchy. It's the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, I remember that from like AP psychology 20 years ago in high school. How important is the ability for you to express yourselves, like to your own life? I mean, your first essay is due on Thursday, and I believe that's the one where I ask you like look around the world. And so have you done that assignment yet, where you start like you wake up in the morning and you like start tracking all of the speech and expression rights that you have that you didn't even know? Okay, so imagine living in a world where you turn on the radio and there's just one channel and it's controlled by the government. Or imagine a world where you're told what to wear to come to class. Or imagine you have to wear your hair a certain way, and you can't wear makeup, and you can't have tattoos, and you have to, like Callahan's class, you're not allowed to speak. Because Callahan's in a class where the professor doesn't let them talk because he's scared of COVID germs, like filtering through the mask. Side note, make sure you put that that's a little ridiculous in your course evaluation at the end of the semester.
Can I ask questions?
No, we just join the Zoom call and take it in the chat.
Yeah, so they have to, so they're Zooming, the professor has a Zoom, and if you have a question or comment, even if you're in the classroom, you have to type
What's the point
it.
of even being in person?
Well, that's kind of what we were saying, is what's the point of being in person? But everyone's, not knocking that professor, I don't know them, maybe they've got their own, like, maybe they've been immune disease and they, I don't know, who knows what's going on. But that is a little insane. But imagine living in that world, right? That if you're unhappy with what your elected leader's doing, you can't go and protest. You can't bitch about them online. You can't, tweet about it. So self-realization is not the hierarchy of needs. It's more freedom of speech and freedom of expression is critical to us as a species. Why? Because we need it to express ourselves. It's critical to our happiness. Because if you take it away, you lose that ability to flourish, be creative, explore. We are social animals. Even introverts still need human interaction. I mean, if you just take this last dumpster fire of a year and look at it, when we had the lockdown and everyone was like stuck at home, people craved human interaction, right? I remember having like Zoom dates with my friends to watch like TV shows together. We played game night. This was like when you could not go anywhere, right? Because we crave interaction and communication. We also need expression to develop our own intellect. Because as much as I'm trying to play devil's advocate and respect Callahan's professor's decision not to allow students to speak in class, if you don't have that power to speak in class, what happens to your own intellectual development? Like what if you just had to sit here quiet the entire time? What would happen? Would you you wouldn't be engaged, right? Your brain wouldn't be turned on the same way, perhaps. Okay, so I think this is the one that Aristotle came up with. If you have the article pulled up, I don't have that written in my notes, but I think it's in Aristotelian, I think is how you say that, theory. Now, problem with this approach. It's very kumbaya, flowers in your hair, right? Humans need communication. Does it really justify free speech though? Or is it simply encouraging us to have the ability to communicate and express ourselves, right? So I think this is a good theory because it's pretty accurate in terms of describing humans, but is it really a strong enough justification for all of the regulations that have happened, like through the law and through society in terms of free speech? And so again, it's more saying we need communication as a species, but it doesn't necessarily say this is the justification for free speech. It's more, this is the justification for us as humans to communicate, and to express ourselves. Does that make sense? So again, nice theory, right? Love, la, la, flowers in your hair. Good stuff. Okay, now we're gonna get to some of my favorite ones that are not in the article. So I'm going to ask you to think about these as I go through them, but I know that you haven't read about them. There is the liberty model, which is going to be our fifth one. This is different than the self-government model. Don't get it confused. I've had students in the past get them confused because you think government, you think liberty, all that good stuff. With the liberty model, kind of like, if you've ever taken like a law class or a philosophy class and you learn about natural law or like that like natural rights that people are born with. Under this theory, freedom of speech is a right that every individual is born with. It's just part of our like natural liberty and freedoms as a human being. So if you've ever taken, I don't know if any of you have taken like the international law class, probably not yet. What are some other rights that like the world and the global community has kind of said should be right, like the rights of man, like rights of humans? What's the big document that the UN put together that like 120 something countries signed? The Declaration of Human Rights. Oh, come on, guys. You don't know about that? All right. So the UN Declaration of Human Rights came about, I think it was 1948. So just after what? World War II. The global community came together and they're like, we cannot let like this disaster happen again. Let's all sign this document giving people across the world certain rights. So like what might be one right that you think should be like a global right that everyone has? The right to what does not exist anymore that the 13th Amendment abolished? Slavery. So that's one of the rights in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, is that no one should have their like freedom of movement, their life, and their liberty like taken away, right? There should be no slavery or no involuntary servitude. One of the things should be you should not be imprisoned without like fair trial or certain procedures. So there's certain fundamental things as a human, the moment you're born, salute, you are allowed the right to freedom of movement. You're given a nationality. You can't just take away someone's citizenship. So there's certain things that people like are fundamentally born with. So this theory says that freedom of speech and freedom of expression is so important that regardless of like where you're born as a human, this is one of your fundamental core rights. Now, the problem with it is what happens? It's not always followed. You're born in a really repressive society. You're not allowed to speak your mind. And I know we always shit on Russia and China and North Korea. Those are just like really obvious examples, but there's other countries where you cannot speak up. And I think I referenced earlier on about Kenya. I remember me telling you about Kenya and that they had some elections that were problematic and the journalists were reporting about it. And then all of a sudden the journalists were disappeared, right? They just vanished, presumably murdered. That same student was talking in class last night. We were talking about advertising regulations in terms of like commercial speech. And she even said like the ads in this country are like bananas to her. Because in Kenya, you never see ads for lawyers. You never see like all of these political ads. Like society is just not structured that way. You just don't see that type of expression, that information. So she said it's like overload when she comes here. Because back home, you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. So this model is great in theory, that it should be something that we all have protected. But really, if you're born, depending on where you're born, you don't have it, right? You might not have free speech. If you are born in North Korea, this doesn't really apply. And the other bad thing about it is, so the UN document's great, but what happens if someone violates the Declaration of Human Rights? What's the penalty? Is there a police force, a global police force that will go in and punish someone? Like Putin allegedly, right, poisoned his political opponent to keep him from running in the election. Is anything going to happen to him? Like, it's not like, you know, Earth police is going to like scoop him up and put him in Earth jail, right? That doesn't happen. So that's one of the problems when if you study international law, which I know the political science majors have to take that class, I believe that's one of your requirements, is international law doesn't really exist because there's no what's the penalty, right? What's the enforcement mechanism? You have little tribunals pop up when there have been war crimes and stuff like that, but that's about it, right? I mean, God knows what is going on in North Korea right now. Nothing's going to happen to him. Kim Jong, whatever. Un. I always get them confused. Okay. Anyway, so great in theory, right? It's one of our natural rights as a human being. Like, woo! In practice, unequal application, or there's a total absence of it in certain countries. All right. My all-time favorite one is number 6. That's the safety valve. Do you guys know what a safety valve is? I always imagine a factory, and it's got lots of like steam pipes going up, right? Like let's say it's a steel factory or something. There's lots of like pressure points. What happens if the pressure builds up in one of those pipes? Right? There's an explosion. So a safety valve will let you open up and release some of the pressure, right? And release some of the steam. So that's the same theory when it comes to freedom of expression, is that you have to give people the ability to express themselves, because if you don't, just like that steam pipe, pressure might build up. If you have a repressive government, it'll breed resentment, it'll breed fear, hatred, anger. And so you have to have free speech so people can express those opinions. Otherwise, it might boil over and you might have a government topple. And so I always think about last summer, I went on a Russian history bender because I want to do the Trans-Siberian Railroad for my 40th birthday and go from St. Petersburg to Beijing, like through Mongolia and Siberia. Like I'm gonna stay in a yurt, like one of those huts, and like shoot archery and stuff. It's like a 20-day train trip, right? I'm super stoked about it. I hope, obviously COVID will be done long before that because I have many years before I turn 40. But I was doing a lot of research that one summer when that idea crept in my mind, I'm going to do this trip, this trip of a lifetime. I started researching Russian history. And if you remember what happened to the Romanovs, remember you have Tsar Alexander and his whole family are taken down into a basement and they're all shot and killed. Why? There was a revolt, right? To throw the monarchy out and create a new form of government. Perhaps if there had been more of freedom of expression, and if citizens had more of a voice to express their discontent to the monarchy, maybe it wouldn't have happened that way, right? Maybe the Romanovs would have still, been alive. That's that whole Anastasia, people are claiming that they're Anastasia, like the princess, like that movie. I think there was like a Disney movie and stuff. That's from that, that they were kicked out of like the palace, brought to Siberia, to a town that my trip goes to. I'm really excited. And then at one point they're brought down into the basement of a house and they're all executed like with like they're shot, and then the bodies all disappeared. Like no one knows where they're, no one's ever found their bodies. And then you have people claiming to be Anastasia. But again, you have a society where people and citizens and peasants and stuff feel that they don't have a voice. So the pressure exploded. So having free speech in theory should allow some of this hatred, anger, frustration to come out. And so the safest path for a government, especially, well, pretty much any type of government, is to allow people to express their grievances. What's the problem with this? So I gave that example of like Russia, but do you think this always works in practice? Have certain like democracies throughout history face different problems, or other forms of government face different problems? Like you see like revolts and revolutions throughout history. So who knows if this actually is correct, right? And that it'll actually happen. Although I guess if you even think about like the French Revolution, that was another thing where people didn't have like the power to air their grievances, and so then it boiled over. So maybe there is some truth to it, but I do like this theory. I think it's an interesting theory. I just don't know if it always practices. All right, now we come to a kumbaya theory. Don't worry, y'all, we're almost done. And that's the tolerance theory. Guys, we really want to promote tolerance and acceptance in our society. And in order to do that, we have to let people live in a society with conflict and let them express their opinions about conflict, and then we come together and resolve it. That's why I said the kumbaya theory. Do you think free speech actually does promote and teach tolerance? I mean, look at Gasparilla, one really interesting example of free speech in action. Who do you see with like posters on sticks and stuff at Gasparilla?
Oh,
Jesus is coming. The end of days. There's always at least a handful of like abortion, you know, like you're going to burn in hell because, you know, of your fetus and, you know, all this stuff, right? So those individuals have free speech. Are they really promoting tolerance though? Or are they just expressing their own agenda? Yeah, their own agenda. And so that's oftentimes what happens. So even though on paper this looks good, right, that everyone should be able to express themselves, we will learn from each other and become more tolerant and open. But I think I hesitate to say the opposites happened, but in a way, people are getting more polarized. Like their opinions are more like conflict.
Like you're like less willing to like talk about like everyone else's opinions because like yours is the only one that's right and like end story.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that we have to work on as a society, I think, is trying to listen to other people's views, which is difficult, right? It's very difficult, especially as an instructor. I've had several conversations this semester with other faculty because it's a very polarizing semester, right? Because it's a big election semester. So we have a difficult job of trying to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and trying to like balance it and stuff. And then, but then there's some ideas that are just wrong, but you have to still try to, I don't know, it's a balancing act being an instructor. But anyway, so again, some expression creates problems, doesn't really, you know, cause peace. Okay, now I'm just going to label this the modern theory. It's by someone named Frank Hyman. Probably Heyman, not Hyman. And his communication context theory, so it's H-A-I-M-A-N. I know Patricia can't see the bottom of the screen. It's more of a modern communication context theory. So it's saying that unless there's some harm done, the answer to all of our problems is more communication. That the more communication, the more expression we have, the more our problems will be solved. And kind of similar to the autonomy theory, Heyman says that there's a lot of individual power when it comes to expression. And really, we should never censor anyone, right? Don't censor the speaker. Don't censor or block the listener, because you should be able to hear everything, and then as your own individual, you should make decisions. So again, the listener has the ability to like decide what they want to hear, what they want to listen to. So again, unless there's some type of harm being done, then you should not restrict speech. The answer should always be more expression, more expression. I think, I don't remember the exact years. If you have your computer, if you want to Google Frank Heyman, I think he was in like the 50s, 60s, something like that. I don't have the years written down. Let's see what Katie can find.
I have a Francis Heyman 1708.
No, it's not that one. I can look it up, but I think he was living in a world where, because he's an American theorist,
Oh, the American.
he might not be super famous, so maybe he doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
I don't think he does.
Okay. Well, anyway,
He was born 1921 and served the Air Force 1942. Is that
yeah, that sounds a little bit more familiar.
Franklin?
Franklin, yeah.
Like a line.
Yeah, that's him. So he was born like he's mid-century, right? Probably when he was coming up with like I was think 50, so I think that's accurate.
No, it says 20. He was born and then he served in the Air Force at 1942.
Okay, I'm thinking he probably developed his theories when he was in like the 1950s and 60s. So really what was happening in like that post-war era and stuff like that is he probably, I mean, I don't know when he created the exact theory, but there was a lot of like social change that happened after World War II. So it would make sense for someone living in that time period to say like, we need more speech, we need more expression, like don't censor us because look at what can happen with war, right? Because he just lived through a war. And so if you censor and block ideas, then it causes conflict. So I think that makes sense. I first learned about him because I go to the National Communication Association conference, and the Free Speech Division gives out an award every year, and it's called the Franklin Heyman Award. And they give it to someone that's like written an impressive article that's gotten published about free speech or something, you know, a real contribution to this field. And I was like, who is this person? And so that's when I started researching, and I found that he had this theory, which I do really like. Okay, number 9 is easy. And it's kind of the catch-all. It's the plurality approach. So obviously, if one single theory is not enough to explain this complex, complicated concept, which we know is complicated because we started out the semester day 1 talking about how complicated this stuff is, you can mix and match your own combination of theories. When in doubt, just pick and choose your favorite bits, right? Your favorite part. You guys like how I match? Polka dots, polka dots? Yeah, so classy. Okay. So now, I've just talked for an hour giving you 9 different theories of free speech. What are some of the ideas that you guys came up with? And let's see. So there's 2 ways we could do this. One, we could brainstorm and spit our ideas and like list a bunch out on the board. Or you can go back into your pairs and see if you can distill from what you wrote down and like give it a name, right? So like develop your own theory. Because like I said last week, I'm curious, based on your life experiences, all of these were written years ago. This guy is the most modern one, and he's probably dead. Okay? I mean, that's just a guess. I don't know, Marcus, is he dead? Born in 21? He's probably dead. Yeah, he's probably dead. He did. Okay? So we don't have one for 2020. There is nothing that's been developed that's new about free speech. He was the most modern one. He lived in a time before social media, before computers, like in the home, before smartphones and iPhones. So speech has drastically changed from John Stuart Mill's days, certainly Aristotle's days, right, up until now. So which approach do you want to do? Do you want to get back into pairs and try and like create your own theory and put a name on it? Do you want to brainstorm and like throw a bunch of stuff on the board and see if we can come up with like one master one? Which approach? The second approach? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to play more music. Let me move Dr. Bones out of the way. Good video. Can be a good video, my best video yet. All right. Destiny and Cassandra, what are some of the ideas? Why do we need free speech? How do we justify it in our world?
We said that we don't have to worry about like what you're saying in fear that something bad will happen to you.
Okay, and I think that's kind of, you guys were talking about fear of imprisonment.
Yeah, and like being punished for like having a opposing defense.
Okay, because fear will lead to like repression, okay? Do you have something else to expand on this? Okay.
Oh, it's different.
A different one, all right, hold on to that one. What else do you guys have?
It allows evolution.
So kind of almost like that self-realization, like humans need it to really develop.
If you're like able to talk to other people from different perspectives and like that's how you can share time and figuring out what works and what doesn't.
Okay, so kind of a combination of that and marketplace of ideas, right? Like you move forward with ideas. Okay, and anything else?
We said gain knowledge with other people with the same stuff kind of thing, that's a business idea.
Okay. I think that works. Anything else? Those are your big ones?
Yeah.
All right, Callahan?
Like similar to the evolution, like the innovation of society moving forward. Like the community.
Okay. That's a good one. I mean, yeah, evolution, innovations, we could combine those. Okay. What else did your group come up with? Anything different?
Check and balance with some of the
Okay, that's good. That's very similar to the
and
self-government.
and we said kind of like being able to speak freely about like the government is like better for the well-being of the country because like you can sort of like say what needs to be fixed, like everyone can like have an opinion and explain what they think is like, the most important to change.
I just wrote health check. It's kind of like a way to check the health of a society, of a nation. Okay. Did y'all have anything different?
I'm not sure if this goes with like fear and punishment, but also the knowledge, but like not having to fear like judgment at all. And then as well as like the progression of society, like educating one another on different values and stuff.
Okay.
That pretty much touched it.
Okay. So are you impressed by yourselves at all? Because what you guys have come up with are very similar to a lot of these like widely accepted theories. So it's pretty impressive that you were able to like rise to that level. Like this stuff's like been published and written about like a lot, and you guys have pretty much done it. What about, so I really do, I mean, you can connect a lot of these back over. Which do you think would best address, like, how has technology really changed us as a species? Because if we take it from any of these theorists, like their lifetime, we live in a completely different world, right? Where you can speak to someone on the other side of the planet, you know what's going on across the world, like quickly. And Callahan, I'll get to you in 1 second. Yesterday, I heard a story on NPR while I was driving about the importance of the media in times of election. Back in the day, before we had the internet, television, even before we had radio, people would go to the newspaper buildings and they would stand outside because the newspapers were the first entity, the first like institution in society that found out the results of elections. And some newspapers even developed systems where they would have lights on the roof. And if one candidate won, they would have a light like shooting this way or like a different colored light. And if someone won the other party, they would have it like shine the other way because people wanted that information quickly and they couldn't get it because they would have to wait for it to be printed and delivered and all that stuff. Nowadays, you can like actually check on your phone, like the status of how many votes have come in, right? And you have all of these different ways of finding information. So totally different world in terms of globalization and quick information. Callahan, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say like the innovation of society, like technology will allow you to take like say like Japan has a good idea on this, and America has a good idea on this, and Europe has a good idea on this, and you take them and mesh them together.
Okay, good.
How it works together.
So taking the best parts of like technological advances and ideas from other countries and then being able to merge them together. So maybe what we could come up with is our own global free speech theory that you need the ability to share like ideas like quickly and throughout like the world to develop our own human evolution and to innovate like new ideas that would benefit everyone on the planet, something like that maybe. It's difficult. It's difficult coming up with a theory, right? This is what scientists and scholars do is first, you have to learn about everything that's already existing out there on a subject. And then you sit there and you have to try and come up with something new. It's pretty difficult to do. Like I said, I think about this stuff sometimes and I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know what it would be. But I think you guys are right with a lot of these. I like these two because they're more optimistic, right? The fear and repression and the judgment, like, you need free speech. Otherwise, like, you'll constantly be living in a world where you can't express your opinions for fear of ridicule or something like that. I think that's good. It's also, it's a good temperature check on a society as well. So yeah, so I think you guys have some really good ideas. Cool. So from all of this, great first baby step into the world of scholarly thought and developing new ideas. What do you think about freedom of expression and free speech now that we've learned all of these different justifications and theories and rules? It's important, very important. So think for yourself, what do you think is the best one of the existing theories? Like, which one would you ascribe to? Like I said, safety valve is one of my favorites. I'm not sure if it entirely works. There's problems with all of them, okay? But I think if you were to pick and choose different elements that you like, or come up with your own, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So hopefully from today, doing the reading and then listening to me explain things and then developing your own thoughts, you really see how important this stuff is. I mean, I can't express to you how lucky we are to be living where we're living because of our ability to express our ideas and to challenge the government and all that good stuff. So moving forward, what we're going to do is go topic by topic. So next week, I want you to read about defamation. And your online work is a continuation of defamation. So you're going to look for an article about defamation that you think, or sorry, not even an article about defamation. You want to look for an article, like a newspaper article, a podcast, something on the radio, a movie, where you think someone might want to sue because of how they're portrayed. So take Kim Jong-un and the movie The Interview, right? Did you guys see the movie The Interview when it came out? Do you think that he could sue, was it Seth Rogen and James Franco, for defamation for the way that he's portrayed in that? Okay? Or just look at like any celebrity magazines the next time you're at Publix and like read the headlines and see what you think. Could you find an article? And then your analysis is going to be, could that person sue for defamation? And here are the steps and stuff like that. It'll make sense once you look at the online prompt. After that, we're going to have a really interesting class about hate speech and fighting words, right? Then some fighting words is what they used to say. Then we're going to learn about speech writing, and we're going to start working on your first paper and your first presentation for this class. And for that, because that's only a few weeks away, I want you to start thinking about what book, movie, work of art, piece of music that you want to talk about that has been banned, censored, or is controversial. It could be banned or censored in the United States, or it could even be internationally. I think I hinted once that Dr. Seuss was banned in China. And so you could write your whole paper about how a kid's author was banned in China if you want. And so we're going to learn how to put together a speech, and then you're going to write your paper, and you're going to then present to the class. Okay, so that's coming up pretty quickly. So start thinking about that. Make sense? Now, final thoughts. Your online work this week is to submit your essay. So if you remember back to the beginning of the semester, you are allowed to use first person when you write your essays, not your research papers. This is a personal self-reflection. You should look at, I don't remember what the page limit is. I think it's like 1 to 2 pages, probably aim for 2 pages, double space type. You upload it onto Blackboard. All that I ask is you have a clear introduction, body, conclusion, because UT students have a tendency to just write one massive paragraph, and it's super fucking annoying to grade. This is something that you're going to personally reflect on. I'm not going to like criticize your ideas. This is, I want to see your development through the semester and what your like the eye-opening process that you have. So it's kind of like you give it your best shot, you'll get full points on it. But because you don't have access to your classmates' essays, what I want you to do for the discussion board is to film a 30-second to 60-second video of you explaining it. So you can take your phone, you can do a selfie on your phone, you can record it on Zoom, or if you want to earn some extra credit points, you could go to the speech center and have them record you doing it there, and then they'll let me know that you went to the speech center and I'll throw some extra credit your way. So once you have your 60-second video clip explaining your essay, so you write your essay, you might want to jot down some of your ideas, right? Record yourself, throw that video on YouTube, and then just share the link. That's the easiest way to do it. And if you're not comfortable using YouTube, we can speak about it. But really, after this week, you can delete it forever off of YouTube. So just share the link. This is much easier than you like having to wait for a video to upload. And then because you have to watch at least 3 of your peers' videos, then you're going to sit there and wait for it to download, and it's annoying. And it annoys me, right? Because I've got 20 of you that I have to like download and all that stuff. That's one lesson I learned from teaching speech over the summer. Okay, so why are we doing these little video briefings? One, you need to get used to public speaking, organizing your ideas, but why are we doing it virtual? Normal semesters, I have us doing it all in class live, but what's going on in our world today? Yeah, well, yeah, the pandemic, I mean, obviously. Everything nowadays is through a camera lens anyway, right? Your Zoom meetings, your Zoom presentations in your other classes, Skype interviews, all that stuff. So you guys are going to hate the experience of recording yourself. You're going to hate it. It's terrible. I had to record a 30-second graduation video for the Instagram, and I took 30 of them because I didn't prepare first. So here's my tips. 1, jot down your ideas on a note card or a piece of paper or something like that, and then run through it. Second tip, give yourself 2 takes. Only record it twice and pick what you think is the better one. It's not going to be perfect. It won't be perfect, right? Public speaking is not perfect. There's always something that you could do differently or something that you could change. So cut yourself some slack. If it's not amazing, who cares? It's just our little bubble that's going to watch it anyway. And then the next one will get better and will get better and get better, okay? So again, record it yourself, have your friend record it, go to the speech center and record it. Throw that bad boy up on YouTube. Cut yourself some slack. Try to just do 2 takes and done. And so again, for this, you might even just walk us through like your typical day of all the things, or what you found to be the most surprising about this exercise, or what you weren't aware of. Like, it's totally up to you what you want to share with your peers. Okay? Sound okay? It's manageable. Yeah.
So again, it's 30 to 60 seconds about anything you want to say about it.
It's your essay. It's take what you think is the most important parts of what you've written in your essay and share with the class. Okay? So it's important to write your essay first and then distill your talking points and then record it. And so then once you have it up there, go through and comment on at least 3 of your peers. So in Katie's global speech class, we just did it this past week. Did it work? Like clicking on YouTube links and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did the same thing. I recorded it like 20 times before because I was like, I was all over the place because I didn't do the notes before, and then
But once
I
you
figured out that I needed to do notes because I was
it's
just
better.
like, talking and it wasn't working, then it like, worked.
The only other nugget of information is don't comment on YouTube, comment on the discussion board, because I'm not going to go through like looking for comments on everyone's YouTube links, but I will go onto the discussion board. Okay, sound good?
So we just put the link.
Yeah. Easy peasy, right?
Yeah, you can even like, there was like an option when you upload it to YouTube for it to be like private, so like only people who have the link can view it.
Yeah, that's
that
what
way,
I do with my class lectures.
Yeah, that way no one, like even if you don't delete it.
Because my God, I do not want what I say in the classroom blasted out on Front Street for, President Bond, like all that talk about like palm tree t-shirts and stuff, like I totally lose my job. So, all right, good. So again, if you need help with any of that, go to Speech Center. I think I put online how to upload to YouTube. Or you can always hit me up during office hours this week, but good class today. You guys had some really interesting ideas. All right, online people, send me a picture of your class notes and some of your ideas about free speech theory, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah.